We now return to haunted history. Before the city of Atlanta became the Georgia state capital, the town of Milledgeville played that role. Wealthy members of Georgia society came to Milledgeville regularly to wine and dine. One of the most popular spots on the Milledgeville social circuit was a lovely plantation home called Rose Hill. It was built in 1852 by landowner Daniel Reese Tucker for his wife Martha and daughter Emma. Daniel Tucker made his money raising cotton, corn, and sweet potatoes on a 10,000-acre plantation.
It extended over 3 counties, and the story has it that if you rode a horse from any part of the property to the other end, you could not complete that journey in one day.
Rose Hill was known to be the place in Milledgeville to hold the grandest parties and balls. Daniel, Martha, and Emma Tucker were considered the perfect hosts.
Based on what his friends wrote, and particularly after his death, he seems to have been very loyal. He seems to have been a man of integrity. He was a man who gave a great deal to his friends. Frankly, I think he was a people person. And I think he enjoyed people and he wanted to be surrounded by mobs of people. And that's one of the reasons I believe he built this house.
Unfortunately for Daniel Tucker, arthritis forced him into a wheelchair at the age of 50, just at the time when his slaves were being freed by Union forces entering Georgia. It is documented that Martha Tucker stood firmly at her front door as Sherman's troops passed, hoping that Rose Hill would be spared the Yankee torch. The arthritic Daniel Tucker watched from a balcony above. The Tucker way of life was about to change, drastically.
Everybody hunkered down and tried to pretend that it wasn't happening. You couldn't very well pretend when you had 3 times as many soldiers sitting out on your front lawn as there were people in the town. You couldn't very well dismiss it.
The Rose Hill mansion survived the Civil War, but both Daniel and Martha Tucker died shortly after the conflict ended. Their daughter Emma took over the house.
Well, my only assumption is that, one, she had enough money to be able to support the place, which she did, being married to George Royal Sibley. She could afford to take the place up.
After Emma Tucker died, Rose Hill passed out of the family and was purchased by R.W. Hatcher, who renamed it Lockerley Hall after his ancestral home in Scotland. When Hatcher passed away, the home became the property of a company specializing in the mining and distribution of kaolin, a rare fine pottery clay found in abundance on the property. During this time, the house was used primarily for corporate guests. It was then that the ghosts of Lockerley Hall reportedly made their presence known. The first sighting was thought to be the spirit of Daniel Tucker.
The cook was in the kitchen, and she came walking out as she would ordinarily to go upstairs. And all of a sudden, she stopped because standing in the hallway in front of the old butler's stairway was an elderly gentleman dressed in a long tan trench coat. And he didn't say anything, and he was only there for about 60 seconds, and then he disappeared.
Of all rooms in Lockerley Hall, the most spiritually active is the one once occupied by Emma Tucker. Emma has apparently made herself known on many occasions, in a variety of ways. The first to see Emma's ghost was a painter working in her former room.
And he said that he turned around while he was painting, and there was a woman standing there with long hair and a dress down to the ground, all dressed in white, and had no idea what to think or what to say. And in a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds, she disappeared.
Emma Tucker next appeared to a guest who was staying in her room.
an English gentleman was upstairs in the bedroom that was known as Emma's room. And he was getting into bed when all of a sudden he looked up and there was the vision of the young woman all dressed in white getting in on the other side of the bed next to him. He became so frightened that he jumped out of bed, grabbed all his belongings, and raced out of the house half naked, never to return again.
Emma Tucker has been sighted dozens of times, but only once has she made her presence known through sight and sound.
There was another guest at Lockerley Hall who was given Emma's room, and she was standing in front of the mirror unpacking her toiletries, and eventually she began to brush her hair. All of a sudden she was startled when she heard a voice saying, "Why are you sleeping in my room?" And she turned around, and there was the image of a young woman all dressed in white, a white gown all the way to the floor, with long hair, who was standing in the front of the fireplace.
Why would Emma Tucker's spirit be the one to consistently haunt Lockerley Hall?
Historically, ghosts return to the place that they loved the most when they were alive. And this has happened over and over and over again. And I think perhaps Emma loved this place, and that was her room, and she's happiest here.
And what do Lockerley Hall's administrators and Daniel Tucker's descendants think of their historic mansion being haunted?
I'm not dead yet, so it couldn't be me. But it may be one of our antecedents who is trying to get rid of all of these people that have come into the place in recent years that did so much damage to it. And if there was any excuse for a ghost to be here, that would be it.
The dramatic history of Georgia during the Civil War is ripe with legends of spiritual encounters. Any period of death and destruction conjures up images of ghosts, either sadly returning to the places of their demise, or happily wanting to revisit venues they considered home. Atlanta and its surrounding communities have played unique roles in the history of the state and of the entire South. And whether the spirit of the South takes the form of a ghost or a simple feeling, it serves as a strong reminder of the rich and colorful past of the capital of the New South, haunted Atlanta.